All right, well, we're going to try to use the local Wi-Fi connection here if I can. Hopefully it'll work. If I start having problems, well, that's the way it goes. It can get really busy here on the local internet. Um, I don't feel like using the phone connection to the internet. It just isn't as clear all the time. Hello, everyone. As you come in, I'm just decided to do this now because I probably won't be able to later. Thank you for letting me know in 5 by 5. And yes, I still look pretty grungy here, but that's going to be the case for some time yet. I might be able to trim it up a little bit. I don't really care for long hair. As you can see, that's kind of nasty for me, but we'll see. I still need to keep it for a bit, and I'll probably keep at least some of this for quite some time, just for those of you who are curious. Most of you probably really don't care, but at any rate, I am still working on some things, and today I'm able to do this because the weather isn't cooperating with the crew. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this now while I can. All right, this is an open forum. I'm going to more or less try to just let you all have the floor today. We'll see if we're actually going to be able to do that. I get up here and hopefully this thing starts to operate the way it's supposed to. Looks like it finally is. So I will get into the chat fairly quickly so that we can have a little conversation. No, we're not going to have a call-in show. It'll be on the chat, and I think that needs to be the case, at least for now, so I can kind of control things as they go. Let me give you some background about why I decided to come on today. Um, there are a lot of things I could discuss, but the very number one thing, first of all, is of course uh, the reprint of my autobiography is available, as I said on the last video, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and you can order that. It's not in the description box of this video. You'll have to go back on the video about my autobiography, which is on the live button on this channel. And you can get that address and that phone number for ordering the book if you so desire. A lot of people are really curious about, what I've done over my life, and so it's that's why it's done. It is a reprint. It's not the original. The original print was out of print many years ago, and the publisher asked if he could reprint it, which he has done with a few changes. I haven't actually seen those changes yet, but I understand they were necessary as far as typos or whatever they found there. And so you can order it, but go to the last video to find out what the phone number is and the address and all that. And like I said, with shipping and handling and all that, it's around $20 to $25 somewhere in there. Okay. If you live in Utah, you could go to the store, which is in Santaquin, Utah, and you could just pick it up from them. Also visit with them; they're great people. The reason why I was so happy that they did this is because they've been friends for many decades, and they're just great people. And we are discussing. I'm not making any decisions yet, but we are discussing if I'm going to do this to do a volume two, which will take things that have happened since 1996 to present. But we'll see. I'm not really inclined to do it, but it's a possibility. Okay, just so you know. In the description box below is something that uh, pretty much impacts a lot of the things that I've done. Most of you know about Dr. Michael Heiser, a biblical scholar, linguist, who actually I found out about because of my son Jeremy, who's very much into all of the things with the Bible and just spiritual things in general. And he put me on to Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Heiser, and I've followed Dr. Heiser now for a long time. And of course, he passed away here about a month ago from cancer. You could see him getting sick over a period of time. He had a bout with it a few years ago. Thought maybe he had defeated it, but it came back with a vengeance, and he decided not to fight it, I guess, uh, quite as aggressively as he did before. But Dr. Michael Heiser is one of the best biblical scholars. I put him right up there with just about anybody else you can name. Uh, Unfortunately, there are these divisions in Christianity. I'm right. No, I'm. People say I'm right, and they'll say no, I'm right. In other words, there's this disagreement over dogma and doctrine. And whenever you have that, that's the first indication that there's a problem with the entire system. Okay, Dr. Heiser, as far as Catholics would be concerned, or even a lot of Protestant reformers, would say that he's a heretic, that doesn't understand, and all of those things. And I'm not going to get into that. Everybody's going to come in this belief system from a slightly different direction. I admit that I do because of my own personal experiences, and everybody else will too. That doesn't mean that we should pick on people who don't go the way that we think that they should, because God's going to work with everybody at their own level and at their own speed. Most Christians reject that. For instance, I've talked about that before, where they insist that you have to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and all that, and yet they don't really. They've never met him. They're going off of something that's been written 2,000 years ago and argued and changed and translated in different ways since then. So I get into it with the two great commandments: love God, however you perceive Him, and hopefully you're working with that. And two, to treat others as you would want to be treated. Those two things there, despite what Christians say about having to accept Jesus. And I've lost a lot of followers because of this, but like I said, that's not what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned with giving out the information that I understand. You can take it or leave it. Okay, so that it doesn't hurt my feelings that much. I just noticed the drop, and that's kind of typical. But at any rate, in the description box below is one of the reasons why I say what I say about the New Testament in particular, but also the way the Old Testament has been interpreted. And a lot of people say, well, the whole thing with the Israelites and all that is hokum. It was, they stole from other people in their stories, and well, we all have. Okay, what I find in the Bible, generally, even in the New Testament for that reason. By the way, this isn't just a spiritual discussion. I just want to get this out of the way. Okay, this video is not going to be totally about this, but when you study these things, you realize that at least the way I have come to understand them is, and apparently Dr. Heiser too, for that matter, as you'll see, is that the context for the New Testament, relying on what the church fathers came up with, is really not a good idea, because they really didn't, even though they were only 100 to 300, 400 years after the fact, and people say, well, they were closer to the source, so they know more than Dr. Heiser does. Well, that's not necessarily true, because history, history is written by the winners, and you find that the things that are written at the time are usually political and on down the line, but there are ways to find out what the real truth is. The surfacing of the Dead Sea Scrolls, for instance, was extremely important to understanding the first century and what was happening in the development of Christianity, and how it actually changed. But at any rate, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but if you're interested in that aspect of why I do not hold on to people like Augustine, Epiphanius, Irenaeus, other than some of the historical value that those things, those guys give us, and some framework, why I have a problem with them, and I like to go back to the actual Hebrew, even the Greek, although there's a problem with the Greek, which then was changed over into the Latin, as I've explained. And Latin is not a holy language. I'm sorry about that for the Catholics, but it's just not. And it doesn't give you the real understanding of what the scriptures were about, especially when you take it like St. Jerome was taking things from the Vulgate. It just doesn't work. Just stuff like that. Anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but if you go into the description box, it's about a 10-minute video of Dr. Heiser explaining why you can't use the church founders, meaning the church fathers, starting at about 80 AD to 100 AD on up through even the Nicene Council and the councils at anyway, all those other councils. There's so many of them I can't even name them all, but the decisions on what would go into the canon and those types of things, and also the doctrines that developed and all of that. I will just say that there's, in my estimation, there's definitely a problem with Luke and Acts and its reconstruction of history. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to say much more about it, but definitely the context of the New Testament being judged upon many of the early so-called church fathers is difficult. And Catholics in particular won't like me saying that, but that's okay. I'm not attacking them. I'm just saying that there's more to the story than they've been told, and they need to, at least, as we all do, we all need to be non-dogmatic and to look for the actual truth of the matter. And if those of you who have followed me know my take on it, I think the whole thing has been used for. I mean, the whole process, the whole canon is very good on learning how to treat your fellow man, but it's the specifics in there about who's claiming they got the information and how it was used. That's the problem. And I don't want to get into any detail on that. I think most of you know that I consider the Samaritan to Heb, the Samaritan prophet, that Josephus spends actually more time on than the supposed Messiah Jesus Christ, from the Jew, the side of the Jews. There's actually more historical evidence for that individual and what happened than a lot of the manufactured things that came out later to support the Pauline position in particular. But just go ahead and listen to Michael Heiser. I think you might find it interesting. At least it'll give you some context. I'm not saying you're going to like it. Like I said, many Christians will say, no, he might be a scholar, but he's a heretic. You know, he's blaspheming. You know, he's the Catholics are certainly going to say that. But regardless, I think it's good information, and it helps you to understand, again, my point of view, which is another reason why I've agreed to have this autobiography that was printed back in 1996 and then has been out of print since about 2000, to go ahead and do another reprint of it. And it is available. By the way, I'll be going down to see I think I said this already, I'll be going down to see the publisher, and we'll just talk about some aspects of doing a second volume, a follow-up from 96 forward. I need to get the current templates, so that it makes it easier for them to publish it, print it and publish it if in fact we go forward on that. So I am looking at it. I haven't made a decision yet, but we'll find out. Okay, let's get into some of the other aspects here. I'm just going to run down a list of things, and then I'll look at the chat, and we'll do some discussion. Okay, on the chat, not a call in. Real serious information on what's come out with Biden and Blinken working with the CIA, particularly Mike Morrell, in convincing the 50 intelligence officers to come up with a lie about the Hunter Biden laptop being Russian disinformation. As I've said, I don't know how many times, I'm not going to say it here. I hope you can read that. You know, that's my motto, and I've been with that for a long time because I've worked in and around the intelligence community for many years, and I've watched what's happened. And secret societies are dangerous. I don't care if they're supposed to protect us or not. At the level of their national security that they tack on things and classifications, it's really just to guard their criminal behavior. And I think people are starting to see that now. I certainly hope so. What does this mean? It means that the intelligence agencies need an overhaul, a big one. Maybe just taken apart. Now, we can't expose our defenses, right, to destruction. But there has to be some oversight, a lot of oversight, and it needs to be boiled back down into one agency that can be controlled, and not just by the executive, because that gives the executive too much power. Anyway, that's not for me to solve. I just want to point it out. So there's this thing that's come out with Mike Morrell, actually getting these 50 intelligence community officers, prior supervisors, things like that, to come out with this letter saying that the Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. And apparently Secretary of State Blinken, the current one, and President Biden got together, or at least well, Blinken certainly got together with Mike Morrell and cooked up this whole plan. Do not think that Hillary Clinton and Obama weren't involved in this as well. They obviously were. So there you go with that. And what's that all about? It's pushing, of course. I'm not saying that Trump's all that good of a guy. You know how I feel about that. But Biden and his criminal background that's becoming so obvious now, and the Department of Justice is covering it up. I mean, we just had Garland lie about some things again in front of the Congress. I mean, AG Garland. This is just nonstop. We've had lies from Secretary of Defense Austin, from Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff Milley, from IRS people. Go back to Lois Lerner. I mean, it goes on and on and on. There is no truth in this place right here, except hopefully in the people. But what they're pushing for, as they're doing with this whole thing about controlling the whole world, and they're losing their grip on it. These places are turning their back on the United States, and justifiably so. I totally understand why. The United States is pushing their rules-based order, right? The rules-based order is not law, but what we say goes, right? So people are starting to reject that, and we should too. Rules are not how you govern a society. That's tyranny, okay? And it changes with the weather. You have to have laws. And yeah, you can have too many laws. I mean, that's why we're in the trouble that we have today, because it got to the point where the proliferation of these supposed laws and statutes has become unmanageable. Nobody knows what the rule is. That's why Jesus said what he said. Well, you don't believe in Jesus. No, that's not the case. I don't believe in the one that was promulgated in the Pauline epistles. That's the problem. But at any rate, so here we go with this. It's very simple. All it needs to be is you love God, and and that doesn't mean that you have to love, the Hindu God or the Islamic God or even the Christian God, because they don't even know. Okay, the point is that you have reverence for this higher intelligence, and you try to seek it out and try to get its attributes into you. That was the idea. So you love God, and number two, very simple. You don't do anything to others that you don't want done to yourselves. If we had those laws, it'd pretty much be over with. But see, the governments can't operate that way because they have to have these loopholes to take advantage of you and to steal your wealth and to steal your blood. So rules-based is what they want, not law. And they're trying to implement that here. And basically they've done this with this idiotic Marxist concept of democracy. Okay? 2 wolves and a lamb for dinner doesn't make it right. Okay, just because the majority votes for something, as Michelle Obama said yesterday, people need to get out and vote on gun laws. Well, I'm sorry, but the fact is the government's supposed to protect you in those rights. I don't care if 99% of the people said that you can't have free speech or a gun, you are protected in that. I don't care what the majority says. In my case, which you'll find out if you read this book, they brought up this thing about majoritarian coercion. Okay? And they just said, tough luck. All right? If you understand what I'm saying, you'll have to read the book. In other words, majoritarian coercion is not supposed to be the way that this republic works, and that your rights supersede majoritarian coercion. That's the idea. Okay, you can see where these people are going, like when Swalwell repeated what Biden basically said not too long ago. Swalwell just said it, that if you think you're going to take your AR-15 and defend against the government when they have F-16s, you're crazy. Well, I thought it was interesting because former Navy SEAL Matt Bracken, if you follow him, I do, came out and said, well, gee, it looks like the Taliban took care of that with almost with slingshots. Not saying we want that, but those types of statements by people like Biden and Swalwell and Michelle Obama and Obama and all these people shows you where they're coming from. They don't care about you. And I put up a thing on Twitter the other day where Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Cooper, who I've talked about quite a bit in the past, said, that the governments can't protect you against the criminals. I mean, that's prima facie evidence, right? After the fact, you're already slain, right? He says the only thing that the criminal fears is that you can take them out. So when the government disarms law-abiding citizens, peaceful people, and then prosecutes them if they do defend themselves, all you're doing is setting a stage for an entire, basically a society that's going to disintegrate. So the United States is well on its way down. You already know I talk about that. I'm not going to get into the particulars, and that it'll probably fall because of this thing right here, what's happening there. We're seeing the financial situation, and also there are other things happening as well, which I'm not going to get into today. Okay. One of the things I will say about spiritual things is that there's always these arguments about who's going to hell and who's going to heaven. And it's always based on whether or not people abide by but I don't mean anybody here, but I just mean people that make this argument, whether you abide by their interpretation of what you're either guilty of or not guilty of, or what heaven and hell are. I once told you that a sage of mine said to me, how does God know who's supposed to be in heaven? They show up. And this goes for everybody. Okay? You go where you're the most comfortable. If you want to go with these people that, want to, worship Baphomet and Moloch or that kind of lifestyle, okay, you'll go there. But in reality, you're putting yourself in hell. I'm not going to define all of that. But basically what I'm saying is you go where you're the most comfortable. You'll depending upon how you have governed your life and how you have an association with God will determine who you're with later. Okay? In my situation, because nobody really knows. I mean, everybody insists on it based on something that was written, 2,000 years ago, or based on, some new person that says, that they're the mouthpiece of God, or whatever the situation is. I'm not going to get into all the New Age stuff and all that too. There's some good things there, but the bottom line is that your relationship with God is personal. I said I wouldn't make this a religious or spiritual discussion, but I have to say this much. What you'll find out, as far as I'm concerned, for me, what would heaven be for me? Not floating around on some cloud singing praises to God that he's going to get bored with. He doesn't have a problem with ego or with self-respect. Okay, he doesn't have that problem. So he doesn't expect people to be down there doing this thing where they're constantly bowing down to him. No, he wants you to go out there and do things. All right. In my situation, what would be heaven for me, is to be with my wife, hold hands, embrace her, do things with her, and the kids, of course. And that will also include intimacy. That's what I look at. And people say, oh, no, there is none of that on the other side. Well, you don't know that. Based on what you think the interpretation of the New Testament is. Now, floating around a cloud playing a harp, singing praises all day is not my idea of heaven. If it's yours, go for it. That's what you want. Good. Do it. That's not mine. Okay? And I'm just telling you that. So you'll see that in this book when you get it, if you decide to get it. Okay. So as I say here, I want to embrace my wife, hold hands, walk along a beach, do things with her, all the while learning about God. In my situation, it's about father and mother. You can't be a father unless there's a mother. And that's why Moloch hates the binary situation of men and women, and Baphomet too, hates the concept of binary men and women on earth today, and why that's being attacked so much right now is because that is the fact. The ancient Israelites actually did know about the mother in heaven. They were just told that they're not supposed to worship her separately. But anyway, that's another thing altogether. Finally, on this situation, same kind of information. Matthew 11:6, it says, blessed is he who shall not be offended in me. I'm just saying that as well. And another part, Matthew 11:12. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. A lot of religious institutions skip over that when they think that they have the right to be judge and jury uh, in God's stead, in Christ's stead even. And this tells you what they'll do to you. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent seize it by force. You need to go look at that and really ponder what that's about. Our history, even Christian history, has been about that, seizing the kingdom by force. It's really what it's been about, not about the pastorals like the Beatitudes that they claim. It really hasn't been that way. Okay. Some other things that are happening right now that I think we need to bring up. Now that the Saudis are being allies with Russia, China, Iran, etc., wow, that really puts the United States, as most of you know, in a really bad situation. And we've done it to ourselves. We've been the bullies in the world, right? And so now the people are saying, we're coming out of you. It even goes along with Revelation, come out of her, my people, that you not take part of her plagues. And you wouldn't think that all these other countries would, that would have anything to do with them. Well, it does, just like it does for you. And you should be able to do it on your own the best that you can. But at any rate, news came out not long ago, and this is kind of disturbing, that there were Saudi operatives on 9/11. Now, people aren't going to like me saying that on YouTube, but here's the most important part, because we knew some of them were Saudi. It's now come out that they were known CIA assets. We've known about that now for nearly 20 years, but now it's just starting to leak out to where it's being discussed. So, do we blame the Saudis? No, we blame the people here that covered it up and that were actually behind it. And I'm not going to get into all the details of that. If you follow me for any length of time, you know how I feel about that whole asinine story of 9/11. Who did it and how they did it. It's as ridiculous as the idea that a small yacht carried thousands of pounds of explosives and 6 people, and they blew up that pipeline in the Baltic Sea. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Okay. And then finally, before I get into the chat here, which we are going to do, why are they hiding the manifesto of the Nashville shooter? Why don't we know more about the Louisville bank situation? There was a video that came up. I didn't know where it came from. I put it up on Twitter of a Baphomet worshiper, I'm just going to put it that way, who came into a convenience store in Australia. I thought it might be here in the U.S. It was not. It was in Australia, but it doesn't matter because the governments are protecting these people. Came into a store with an axe. Now, the thing that bothered me the most is that the people that were in there apparently didn't know anything about situational awareness. They just let this person walk around like that. Nobody called the police when they walked. Who walks into a convenience store with an axe, long-handled axe, and then turns it on the customers, the 2 customers that were in there at the time, a man and a woman? Almost killed them. Now, that person was eventually arrested, but the point is that these people have been militarized and made to be extremely dangerous because of the way the governments are using this to alter what we are. I'm talking very nebulously here, but I hope that you all understand what I'm talking about. So now we have this Nashville shooter. They don't want us to know about the manifesto because it would damage the social structure. Yeah, no kidding. The one that they want, the one that people in D.C. want here, it will damage that. There's probably some information, as I said, about possible groomers in that as well. I wouldn't be a bit surprised. They're using this whole situation, and I don't want to name it all here because obviously that'll cause a problem, right? They're using all of these different, the real social constructs, not the men-women relationship, which is not a social construct. That is a biological, natural order construct. But these people want to change times and laws, as Isaiah said, and now they want to say that they are the real ones and that we are the social constructs. Do you see what's happening here? This is Moloch and Baphomet worship. Going back to my book and the things that I went through, the things that I still go through, people rejecting me because of what I say, which, okay, but what you're doing is you're rejecting what you say you believe in, and you're accepting Moloch and Baphomet worship. After my book's been out for a while, the new reprint, and some people have read it. I don't know how many have been sold in the last few days. I haven't talked to the publisher about that. I'll probably find out in the next day or so. I will have a call in, or, well, probably both, call in and chat discussion about the book and answer people's questions. Okay, I will do that. I don't know when that will happen. It'll probably be, we're going to wait until some people get a chance to read the book so that they can see exactly what I said and exactly why I did what I did and why I don't denounce it today. I was accused on a comment in my community posts of being proud and that I will never denounce it. Pride is the wrong word because pride comes before the fall, right? Pride is a bad thing. No, what I am is grateful. I'm grateful. I have 11 kids, 18 grandkids, and 5 great-grandkids. I've been able to find out how it is to work with a lot of people, even understanding differences in my own family, which have helped me to deal with things in the world and to understand righteous and unrighteous, good and bad, fruitful and unfruitful. So at some point in time, probably in a month, maybe less, we'll have a call-in and chat forum where we can discuss that book and we can just talk about the things that occurred and why I did what I did. I think you might find that interesting. All right. I'll go to this. Good morning, Lori. How you doing? Okay, I'm coming in at the chat, pretty far along here, so let me back up. I won't be able to go all the way back to the beginning, but let's see what we got here. Yeah, RFK is saying all the right things primarily, but like I said, there's no political savior. Okay, you're gonna have to stand on. You're gonna have to be a tub that stands on its own bottom. I'm telling you. I think RFK would definitely be a plus for the Democratic Party, but by the same token, they're not going to. You understand? They're not going to let that happen. All right, and even if he got 100% of the votes, they're not going to let that happen. All right. Yeah, RK addressed the Ukraine situation, that the CIA is bad news, so is the FBI. The whole intelligence community is rotten to the core. As I just mentioned at the beginning of this video, the information now that we have, and we knew it anyway, that we didn't know exactly who was responsible. I knew Mike Morrell was involved in there somewhere. I didn't know about Blinken. So Blinken and Mike Morrell convincing those 50 intelligence community people to lie, to say that the under laptop information was Russian disinformation. That shows you that you can't trust these people. Okay, they're for themselves; they're not for you, and it's a very small group. As who is that said that? George. I forgot his last name now. I shouldn't have. That's a big club and you ain't in it. Whatever his name was. All right. Yeah, that baloney about protecting the children in Washington State. Look, everything that Washington State's doing right now is to attack the decent citizens. That's what it's about. It's not about protecting anybody. Everything that you see happening in the world today, as I've said, is not about fixing anything. It's about putting the American people in particular at a disadvantage so that they can be totally controlled. But it's also the case around the world. Look what they're doing to the people in Europe. They don't care if there's a nuclear war because that'll do what Moloch, the spirit of Moloch and Baphomet want, the destruction of mankind. So whether it happens through, people starving to death, or they take away their rights so they can't defend themselves against mobs of criminals, you see the end result is the same. That's what I've been trying to get. I hear these people on YouTube, and maybe I'm a simpleton, but I hear these people on YouTube keep talking about how stupid it is for America to do what they're doing. For instance, right now the United States is getting ready to send missiles to Taiwan. Well, now wait a minute. I thought that we had a one China policy understanding of things. So we're going to do in Taiwan basically what we're doing in Ukraine. You see, it's not about might for right. The concept here, the neocons in particular, and all those that follow, is might is right. Well, that might is being taken away from them, and now they're responding like spoiled little children that had their candy taken away, and they're lashing out at everybody and anything. We saw what they did, and I don't know all the circumstances. Apparently, these people, this black group that has been arrested by the Department of Justice for supposedly Russian collusion. Nonsense. You have free speech. They're saying, well, a Russian came and told them to do that. So you're not allowed to find out what's happening in the rest of the world and voice your opinion. This bodes very, very, very badly for everybody. We're not even at war with Russia officially. You can't be accused of aiding and abetting the enemy under the Constitution and treason right now because we have not declared official war on Russia. And yet, see how the rules-based order takes over, not law? They can alter their rule whenever it suits them. They've been doing that to the law anyway, but at least we had a ghost of a chance before, not now. The Shema? Is that what you're saying? Roy needs the Shema? Anyway, getting back to this, what's going on in Washington State. I don't want to cover all of it here, but it's horrendous. Okay, it's absolutely horrendous. What they're saying they can do to your kids without your knowledge or consent, to youngsters who are still trying to understand that they're growing up. The state used to say, in my case, for instance, you're abusing your kids. Why? Because I was teaching them how to do the right thing, even though they had, this extended family in a righteous situation like Abraham would have had, or Israel, Jacob, or Gideon. No, they wanted me to be like the Nashville shooter. Washington State's going down that path, as is California, Oregon, as are California, Oregon, New York, Illinois, and several other places. Even the supposed red states, Utah being one of them. Salt Lake City is controlled by leftists. It is. And these people who violate their oaths to the Constitution because, it can be interpreted in different ways. You see, they're doing the same thing to the Constitution they do to the New Testament, even altering it at will. People say they haven't altered the New Testament at will. Go listen to Michael Heiser, okay? All right. Yeah, protect the children. Yeah, well, that's not going to happen out in Washington State. Like I said, Eric Ashline, anybody that tries to attempt that, they're gonna meet some real. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't present those things. Okay, in Utah, they did do a situation here not long ago where the governor even signed the law. This was a good thing Utah did, despite the liberal bent in Salt Lake County. The governor, they did sign a law which prevents some of these things being taught in schools, etc. Okay, and especially the surgeries. Okay, but eventually, the Department of Justice is going to start coming after people for doing and they do it now. For doing the right thing, you're considered a criminal. It used to be if you did things to kids, the feds would help to stop it. Not anymore. We just had the anniversary of Waco, right? I did a little thing on it. I put it in the community post. You can go look at it. I put it on Twitter, and I put it on the community posts above. You can go look at it and see it. Shows the burning Branch Davidian church and living quarters with a tank going in front of it. Oh, the DOD didn't have any. They didn't help in that. Oh, yes, they did. And so did Delta Force, and so did the FBI and the CIA, not just the ATF. And Orrin Hatch, who was a Utah senator who ran initially on term limits, nobody should have more than 2 terms in Congress, stayed there for over 4 decades because he's a lying piece of garbage, like they all are. And when the situation with the Waco investigation came up, I had personal contact with Orrin Hatch, by the way. It's in my book. Actually, on more occasions than even the book talks about. But the point is, when the Waco thing came up and the investigation was going to start, he said, no, it's not politically expedient for us to investigate Waco. Oh, so the government can murder almost 100 of their own citizens using military munitions, and you're not going to do an investigation because it's not politically expedient. Then you got, of course, Ruby Ridge with Randy Weaver in that situation. You've got the initial bombing of the World Trade Centers, for instance, in 1993 that the FBI actually helped. Nobody ever went to jail in the FBI for that. You had the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, which now anybody who has any experience in explosives knows, and I said it at the time, and I'm not even an expert, that there's no way a car bomb, a truck bomb on the street took that building out the way it did. And we have 9/11. And we have the Boston bombing. And I could go on and on. Anyway, good luck to the people in Washington State that are trying to get a protected children and I don't know exactly which one you're talking about. It could be taking away the guns, right? The assault weapons ban. So I'm not exactly sure, Eric Ashline, what you're talking about there. But it's going to come down to where it's pushing and shoving is what it's going to be. And I'm afraid most Americans will cave. Yeah, D-Man, you're right. To this day, many still disagree on and do not know truth about JFK's demise. Yeah, well, the CIA has pretty much already admitted it. Trump could have done something about it, but again, he makes these promises and then he's so weak-minded, or he's really a liberal Democrat, like I've said for a long time, that he'll say something and then betray you. That's what he does. His track record is full of it. What's this here? We also got troops in Sudan. Yeah, we do. That's right. See? Yeah, they end one war and they start another one so they can drain you of your money, your treasure, and your blood. Put you at a disadvantage. Hi, Lori Tillman. I'm glad you're here. Karen Carpenter, Rebecca Ann, all these wonderful people. Lots of love, right on. George Carlin. Yeah, thank you. When I get up here and I do these things impromptu, I don't have notes on some of this. And sometimes I'll forget somebody's name. I do that quite a bit. All right. Thanks, Greg Williams. I said it very well. Sometimes I get tongue-tied, but thanks a lot. Debbie Donovan, hi. Yeah, I love it. I haven't heard that. But Carlin was a comedian prophet. Yeah, he did say that. It's a big club and you ain't in it. This government's not to protect you and your rights, even though that's the social contract that we're supposed to have with them, the actual contract of the Constitution. No, it's about taking care of the elites, whatever's good for them. You see that in the rules-based order now, which is really what they do, even internally in the United States. And they wanted to foister that on the world, and the world, especially Europe, of course, they went along with it. They're starting to wonder now, like the people in France and Macron saying some of the things he said lately, although he's still attacking his people. But the point is that the world said, no, wait a minute. You mean you can say whatever you want and we have to abide by, even if it's one thing today and it's another thing tomorrow? These people go, yeah, that's right. That's our rules-based order. And they went with no lubrication, I might add. And I call it, of course, dipped. Donkey phallus posterior penetrated. Oh well. Okay. Kimberly Wilson, you can bet they will sign the WHO treaty. That doesn't make it right. And if the Senate doesn't ratify it, I think that they'll still run it, and I think they will, unfortunately. But even if they didn't, the government would still follow suit, as if it had been ratified. That's why I say it's a rules-based order, not law. Yeah, and Region 9 Till I Die said Roy needs his Shema. I think that's what you're saying. You know, Shema, that's just Hero Israel, the Lord our God is one God, right? You know about that? Lord our God is one Lord, rather. I think that's what you're talking about. Um, I have a different view of that, but that's okay. I think that's what you're talking about. I think that's, yeah. Debbie Donovan asked too. I think they mean Shema, that one. Shemag, I'm not sure what they're talking about there. Yeah, I did hear that the Ninth Circuit Court overturning the gas stove ban in California. Karen Carpenter, thank you for bringing that up. What a stupid law! But see, it's again, it's to put the people of America under this green BS is nothing more than a power takeover. That's all it is. So I'm glad the Ninth Circuit, which is really surprising to me that the Ninth Circuit would do that, but Biden's talking about doing something at the federal level to counter that kind of thing. They want you to be totally under their subjection. I've talked about oils, in particular petroleum, right? It's not a fossil fuel. That's a lie. It's abiotic. It comes from something in deep in the earth, in the pressures down there that change rock and those types of things, the gases that are down there, into the thing that you can put into your car for lubrication, etc. I talked to a geologist about this, and they're not even supposed to discuss it. They explained to me that the biotics that are in there happen when this stuff comes to the surface and it picks up some of these fossil pieces in the earth, but that the petroleum itself is abiotic. But they don't want you to know that. And then they say, well, regardless, burning it is bad. Oh, really? So you want to get people to mine lithium, go through that ridiculous stuff. And then where are you going to throw the batteries? Talk about what are you going to do to the earth environmentally? What are you going to do with these batteries that are bad? What are you going to do with them? All they're trying to do, they know their system is failing, so they're trying to come up with a fourth industrial revolution to make you change over so that you're still paying them money and are reliant upon them. It's a scam. Government is a scam. The WEF is a scam. The UN is a scam. And worse than that, they're mass murderers. Yeah, the Watchmen. Parents in Washington have no more authority over their children. Well, it's like this thing with women. How long ago? I mentioned this not too long ago. Women's rights, the Equal Rights Amendment, liberation of women, suffering, the suffrage movement, all this stuff that was supposedly supposed to free women so they could be empowered. Look where it got you, ladies. Look where it got you. You've got men now that can men that can be women, be recognized as women, and you have no recourse. But there are some states that are trying to pass laws about that, but this is going to end up at the federal level as well. They're going to force it down your throats. Nancy Pelosi doesn't love women. She's not concerned about women and their rights and their safety. It's all been a lie so that they could get you to the point of accepting the principles of Moloch and Baphomet. Absolutely no question about it. So some people will say, well, Roy, you're not a Christian. I mentioned this earlier. Roy, you're not a Christian, right? Not in the sense that most people would consider Christianity. No, I'll admit that. But I'll have to tell you something here. If I had a choice, which they're trying to take away, to be in the company of people like Nancy Pelosi, Biden, the Biden family, all those people that worship Baphomet and Moloch up there and are trying to force it down your throat, if I had a choice between being with them and being with traditional Christians that would consider me a heretic, I would go with the traditional Christians in a heartbeat. Because I know that basically, even though I consider them to not understand really the truth of the matters, the truths of the matters, my chances of surviving with them, although there's some question about that considering what happened to me in the 80s and the 90s, and even later than that, but at least they're on the right path, not these Baphomet Moloch worshippers, which are everywhere today and protected by the Department of Justice and the FBI, who even bow down to these things. I'll call them things. And those departments are loaded down with these aberrations. The demons have been set loose. They absolutely have. Yeah, all professional kitchens run on gas, Debbie. I know, that's what I'm saying. They're attacking us at the very basic, and they're saying, well, there are too many people on the earth. Do you realize in the times of the Greek pantheon, they were saying the earth was overpopulated? This has been a game from the very start. It actually started in the story of the Garden of Eden, and some people say, oh, it didn't really happen. They got that from the Sumerians. They got it from, okay. But that just proves my point. Yeah, I know about all that. Actually, I don't know that it's actually passed yet, Watchman. He's saying that they also banned all semi-automatic rifles. This stuff is going to go. The Supreme Court's already ruled on this stuff. Now, the states can do more regulation than the federal government can, but there's a limit on that. This is going to go to the courts, and what it really needs to happen is there was a sheriff in Spokane, Washington, when all this stuff started back about 5 years ago, or maybe a little further, and he said, nobody from the state's coming into my county and taking any of my people's personal weapons, even AR-15s. Well, this is what it's going to come down to. And if cops go out and do this morning, I ran into a couple of police officers. And, I'm a little careful around these guys now. They're not like they used to be. I have friends that are cops, and those guys I trust because I've known them for so long. But these guys, I went up to ask them a question about some directions. And you know what? Until they found out I was a former police officer, they treated me like shit. They were acting like I was just putting them out, asking them a question on directions. They weren't doing anything. They were sitting there talking to a couple of girls. They've been taught that the public is all garbage. And a lot of us are. But when you make overgeneralizations like that and you treat people this way, bad things start happening. And the police are losing respect even from the decent American people. Because they saw what happened during COVID, right? They saw what happened to Chase Allen in Farmington, who was trying to exercise his rights, whether they agreed with it or not. All they had to do is sign, write him a ticket. No. They had to drag him out and then execute him on the spot. Oh, but Roy, you weren't there. You don't know what really happened. I saw enough. All right, let's see. What's this here? Anyone else keep getting nosebleeds? Insert name here, who you are. Well, that could be any number of things. Do I have any information on what happened to the Monograph? I got some information this morning that apparently there's some, I guess he sued somebody and it's not going well, but I'm not certain that's the issue. I really don't know. He has not reached out to me, even though I do believe he answered the phone that day. I do think that was him when I called him. But he hung up and then he said, I got a text saying wrong number. I don't know what's going on. Okay, I don't know. As a matter of fact, I got accused this morning also of being, why do you follow that scum monograph? That shows what you're right, like. And then I got another one on willing witness. If you know who Derek Brose is, Derek Brose and I, I mean, we haven't really dealt with each other for very long, just a couple of times. Uh, I don't agree with all of his position, and I'm sure he doesn't agree with all mine. And but anyway, I was accused of, why do you follow him? I follow Al Jazeera because I want to know what they're thinking. I follow President Biden because I want to know what he's thinking. Although he doesn't think much, it's his entourage, his establishment that puts stuff up. Just because I'm not putting Derek Brose down. I'm just saying that to get accused of that, I blocked the dude. You can go on my Twitter account and see it. I blocked this idiot. The world's full of them. And most of them are CIA, FBI, InfraGard, cyber warriors for the DOD, et cetera, et cetera. They are at war with us in D.C. The people in D.C. are at war with the American people. All right? Oh, thank you, Watchman. Yeah, I don't know that I'd use Vaseline. Oh, that's probably better than some things. But yeah, I'll just let you go with that. That sounds fine with me. Okay. Yeah, 8 genders in the Talmud. Region 9 till I die. Yeah, you know quite a bit about that. And I could give you a lot of the history of this. That's to take down the Goyim. They don't put up with it. Well, in Israel now they do, but Israel, the state of Israel, really isn't what it says it is. But the Talmud was designed in those things to take out the Goyim, to foster that stuff in your minds so that you will not reproduce. Debauchery. And it goes back to some of the things that were happening in ancient Israel and the switch that was done about who God, according to the Bible and according to the ancient scripts, really was appointing to be his people. And I don't want to get into that now, but it goes back to the same thing I've talked about many, many times. We always get back into this kind of thing about the blessing of Jacob, Israel, to Judah when he said, scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver between his feet, until Shiloh comes. And who's Shiloh? Ephraim. But that's another story altogether. I talked about it before. I'm not going to get into that too deep here right now. Yeah, that's right, Debbie Donovan. You're absolutely right. And if you knew about what she says here is, the government just also signed a law giving health care and professional business life to illegals, and his sidekick destroyed our bill. They did another thing, Debbie, and it hasn't been completed yet. But what they want to do is people that score high on their credit when they apply for mortgages, they want them to subsidize buying homes for people like that. That's communism. That's communism. I'm not saying that poor people shouldn't be helped. I'm not saying that. But that's not, under the general welfare clause of the Constitution, what it means is to steal your money and to give it to somebody less fortunate. That's what the churches are for. That's what charities are for. That's what your neighbor is for. But yeah, Debbie, that's exactly right. The Watchman, Ammon Bundy, the one who ran for governor in Iowa, has a warrant for his arrest. He might end up getting shot like they did Finnegan. Oh, they don't like him. He's had warrants for his arrest on a bunch of things. Ammon's real brave, real courageous. He stood up. His whole family stood up. All I can do is wish him luck. That's all I can say about that right now. I doubt, Angela Kern, I doubt that the Watchman would know what happened to Monograph. I don't think he's in YouTube jail. I don't think that's what's happening here. I have some other suspicions, but I don't want to. I don't want to just surmise that I know what it is, because that wouldn't be correct. That wouldn't be right. He hasn't seen fit to tell me, and I'm not going to conjecture on it. Yeah, Carrot Carpet, that's right. There have been some great interviews and discussions about the Oklahoma City bombing of late on the spin-off channels from David Knight's listeners. Yeah, there's a lot of that rehashing going on. That kind of goes back to what I said a few minutes ago about the history of the church fathers, and that people will say, Roy, you can't contest with them because they were closer to the events than you are. And I won't disagree with that statement. I have to take into consideration what they said. But just like finding out what really happened in 9/11, we found out now, even though we knew about it before, that there were CIA assets involved in that, and we knew about the situation. Well, all of those things, uh, the Biden laptop whole situation. Here we are, months, years away from those things, and we're finding out the truth. The same thing can be done with what happened around the New Testament and traditional Christianity development. Go listen to Michael Heiser. It's very short, but it'll give you a good idea. So yeah, a lot of things are coming out now, but that doesn't mean anything will be done. Our Department of Justice, our FBI, our CIA, our entire intelligence apparatus, and the Department of Defense are all compromised. You have individuals in there apparently that are helping things along for us, but they're not. They don't have enough power at this point, and I don't know that they'll ever get it. Which gets us back to this whole leaker situation on the Pentagon leak, right? There's a lot of disagreement going on back and forth about what this airman Tejera, I think is his name, Jack Tejera, and I'm not even sure that's the guy. I've looked at some of the pictures; they almost look like AI to me. But regardless of any of that, the focus has been on the leaker. Wrong. The focus, as with the Hillary emails and the illegal server, should be on the criminal conduct of the government officials that are named in those documents. And it's not. Did the leaker have access or did he not? Did he? Why was a 21-year-old given a TSSCI? That's distraction. We shouldn't even be discussing that. We can mention it in passing, as I have, that I find it a little odd, but by the same token, it begs the question, why aren't we going after the criminal conduct of the people in the Department of Defense, in the White House, etc., etc.? Why aren't we? Yeah, well, who would do it with the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense being compromised and being wholly set against the interests of the American people? Prep, pray, stay out of the way. These people here are going to take it all down. I'm not saying I like that. It's cause and effect. You look at the Russian recruiting videos for their military or the Chinese recruitment programs, and you look at this aberration over here. And I started calling that out as a young officer in the Army back in the 1970s. Okay, how long have we been running here? An hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to call this off. I'd like to get to a lot more, but as you can see, I'm getting messages. Sweet Polly Purebred, you should know I don't have... No, the Noahide law... The Noahide laws are based upon some good things, but they're not Torah-based, number one. Number two, they talk about basically being able to be executed if you don't worship the Jewish God. No, I'm not going to get into that here, but no. All right. Yeah, I got to go. I'm getting messages, and some of them might be important. All right. Again, in the description box, look at Michael Heiser's explanation of the context of the church fathers in regards to the development of the New Testament and why it's not reliable to rely upon them. Just going to say it that way. I'm not trying to change your beliefs. I just think you need to understand that, as I've said so many times, and I'm not saying I'm immune to it, but I'm willing to look that there's something wrong. Okay? If God was, and people say, well, the canon of Scripture is closed, so God's not going to speak to you anymore. Then He changed. He's not the same God He used to be. There's got to be something that happens here to all of us, and that's basically what Malachi says: is that God will give His Spirit to all flesh, and you'll see this division of those who get the Spirit of God and those who don't. And then there'll be people who want to define what that is. Well, it ain't becoming a Catholic, it ain't becoming a Mormon, it ain't becoming a Protestant, it ain't becoming a Baptist. It's something other. All right. So go listen to that. Be aware that things are really going down a bad road right now, really fast. Your money's at stake, your treasure, your blood's at stake. They're protecting the guilty, and they're persecuting and prosecuting the innocent. This is really happening. Prep, pray, stay out of the way, eyes on the horizon, ears to the ground, situational awareness on high. You see somebody walking in a convenience store carrying an axe, you don't take their eyes off them, you don't turn your back to them. That's all I got. We'll see you next time out here.